The Illuminate Arts and Faith Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee wants to help you find your tribe. Do you get way too excited about quoting Wendell Berry or C.S. Lewis in conversations with coworkers? Does your Spotify playlist include hymns, a little jazz, and a whole lot of Andrew Peterson? Join your tribe at Illuminate March 31 and April 1 for education and inspiration from speakers Russ Ramsey, Douglas McKelvey, John Hendricks, and others. Find a complete list of session topics and ticket information at southern.edu/illuminate.
In 2024, I set out to meet as many poets as I could and spend an hour with each one. I got more than I bargained for, more insight, more clarity, more hope. It's proved to be one of the richest highlights of my life. 17 writers, 17 deeply human conversations that made me sit up and pay attention. Franz Kafka once said, if the book we're reading doesn't wake us up with a blow to the head, what are we reading for? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. And that's what I hope this new book will do. I hope it wakes us up, my friends. I hope these conversations will be the catalyst for something to be reawakened, re-enchanted, and reinvigorated. It's called An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets About What Matters Most. I'm Ben Palpin, and I hope you'll come and listen in as I spend a little time with poets like Lucy Shaw, Malcolm Guite, Dana Gioia, and Lee Young Lee. Pull up a chair at the table as we dig into what it means to write well and to live well. An Axe for the Frozen Sea is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the store at rabbitroom.com, or better yet, ask about it at your favorite bookseller.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Andy Osenga is a Nashville music industry veteran. He's a singer-songwriter, a producer, a session player. Now, as an A&R executive, he's deeply involved in the development of other artists. Though now that I think about it, he's always been deeply involved in the development of other artists, whether it was his day job or not. You may also know Andy Osenga as the host of the podcast The Pivot, Stories of People Who Have Made a Change. For many years, I've known Andy to be a thoughtful and smart conversationalist, so I love that he's sharing those gifts with the wider world. If you aren't already listening to The Pivot, you should check it out. Andy Osenga, thank you so much for being on the Habit Podcast.
It's an honor.
And I mean, you're one of my podcasting heroes anyway. I love The Pivot. It's such a great, it's been so fun to see, and I know I've told you this before, to see, somebody deep into their career say, hey, here's this other thing that turns out I'm really good at. I mean, you are really good at what you do on the Pivot podcast.
Man, you're so kind. I would say the same for you. But
well, thanks. But so stories of people who've made a change.
Yeah.
Is your tagline over there. And as it turns out, everybody's made a change, right?
I remember when I first, 4 years ago, not a lot of people had podcasts. I had one friend who had a podcast that did pretty well. Uh-huh. And she encouraged me to start one. And so I said, hey, I got this idea. What do you think about, people who've made a change? She goes, are you going to have enough people to talk to? And it turns out that the answer is just an overwhelming yes.
Yeah.
Is that no one's story is going according to plan.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good to hear that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the idea of a story going according to plan, that almost is by definition not a story.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
If I go to the grocery store and I successfully, find my groceries and pay for them and get back in my car, and if I came home and said, you're not going to believe this story. I went to the grocery store and I got my groceries and paid for them and got in my car, you'd be like, that's not a story.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. What have you learned about storytelling, writing? How has doing The Pivot changed your own? Because you're still writing songs, and
yeah.
So how's it impacted you?
It's hard to count the ways. I'd say the biggest way is it's taught me to listen. Because I'm a talker. I come from a long line of talkers, if we're honest. And, when you get the Pro Tools file of the interview afterwards and you see how much they talk in a WAV file and you see the WAV files of how much you talk and you go, oh, I interviewed this person and then talked more than them.
Yeah.
That's not a good interview. And so then I, sit in the studio for hours editing out all the stupid things I said. And eventually the light bulb goes on of, I could do this in real time.
Yeah.
What if I just didn't talk as much and listen? And it turns out that helps you as a parent and as a spouse and as a colleague and as a friend. So that's honestly been the biggest thing that I've taken away from this experience. And then the next, I started it because, as you remember, I had lost a job and I had nothing else going on in my life, and I was depressed. Yeah. I was more depressed than I realized. And one of the few things I had was some microphones and some interesting friends. So, hey, interesting friends, will you come talk in front of these microphones and just let me try something, because nothing's working. It turned out it worked. And and so initially I was very focused on talking about career, and because that was the phase of life I was in. But then gradually, as the life became a little more normal for me, and as I started talking to more and more people, and even when you talk about career, you realize that most of the times our career changes are rarely about our career. They're about our health, they're about our family, they're about our faith. They're the reason that you excel in a role or you don't rarely has anything. I mean, yes, there's your skill as an employee or whatever, but it's way more about who you are as a person, the work that you have done or have not done. And that is far more interesting than tell me about your job experience.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just been fascinating to learn, and it's been really encouraging. One of the most encouraging things for me was talking to Sally Lloyd-Jones a year or so ago, which is always encouraging because she's amazing.
Yeah.
But to learn that she didn't feel like she was a good enough writer to write her own books for 20-some years. She wrote her first book at 41, and then she wrote the Jesus Storybook Bible. It sold, 3 million copies when she was 42 and 43. I am 41 right now. And so when she told me that, I was 39, and I remember thinking, so she's one of the best in the world at something.
Yeah.
And she didn't start doing that until her 40s. Like, what if the thing I'm actually good at, I haven't started doing yet? And whether or not that becomes my story, especially when you're a musician, it's all about youth. A 40-year-old musician who hasn't sold 5 million copies is a washed-up musician most of the time. Our career is over.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to think, I wonder what I'm going to do, versus, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and every time you talk to somebody, you get a different kind of perspective on that same kind of trajectory. It's just been really encouraging. And it's also interesting, having made music for 20 years, where I present a very polished version of what I want to communicate. Now I put these things out where I say very little. The less I say, the better. And the response is, I get so many more emails and comments on podcast episodes than I ever do about the records that I make.
Yeah.
And people will say things like, I've been listening to you for 20 years, but now I feel like I know you. And I'm like, I said less than I did on my But there's something about when you invite people into story and you invite people into conversation. Yeah. That's how we get to know each other. It's tell me your stories. It's not tell me the facts about you.
Yeah.
Tell me your stories.
Yeah. And I think one thing about your podcast is it feels like it feels like you're inviting people into these friendships that you already have.
Well,
I know occasionally you interview people you don't already know, but whether you're talking a lot or not, to be invited into this conversation that's been, a lot of the conversations on your podcast are just, you're just continuing conversations that have been going on for a long time, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, it's, we are blessed with a community of just incredible people who have been, even if we don't get to see each other as much as we'd like we've been friends for a long time and we'll be friends for a long time. And the great tapestry of our community is pretty rich. And I think is something, even though I probably take it for a little for granted, because I don't think I realize quite to the extent of how unique it is to have this amazing community.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why I started thinking about this, but just when you were talking a minute ago about the shift from thinking about people's careers to thinking about even career changes are often not career changes, but personal changes that express themselves as career changes. To what extent, one thing when I talk to writers about storytelling is the difference between, in a story, external forces acting on a character, as opposed to something internal in the character changing. The characters in something from inside the character impacting the way the story goes.
Yeah.
I assume, you get both of those kinds of forces discussed in the changes that people make, right? Sometimes those are external, sometimes those are something going on inside that then changes their outward situation.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something in your life changes, and then you have to react to that, which changes you as a person for good or bad. Yeah. Right? The external thing that changes might be good or bad. You react to it, that changes your circumstance again, which you have to react to. And
I don't know if we've ever talked about the psychology about the desire, choice, and consequence. So I've
heard you talk about it, but you and I have never had the conversation.
What'd you say?
I've heard you talk to other people about it. Never with me.
Well, maybe I'm being repetitive then.
No. It's because I listen to your podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm saying I'm being repetitive on the podcast now, so maybe I won't.
No, please go there.
No, but as you said, you choose based on what you want, and then there are consequences of those choices, and that might change either what you want or what your choices are.
Oh yeah, right. It's like the definition of marriage, right there.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. No, but and then Flannery O'Connor says a story always involves in a dramatic way the mystery of personality. Oh wait, I said the wrong thing. O'Connor says a story is a dramatic event that involves a person because he is a person and a particular person. And I think that's really relevant to the stories that get told on your podcast.
Yeah.
Not just that this thing happened to me, but the thing that happened to me, the things that happen to us are common to us, but then the way that we react to that or what we do with it is because we're a particular person.
It's specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Buechner thing, right? The story of one of us is the story of all of us.
Yeah.
But, it's the more detail you share about your own story is honestly, it gives the listener a better chance to identify, which is so counterintuitive. As a songwriter, that's a thing we talk about a lot, is like when We Are the World, the big anthem that's just kind of has a big bunch of things that kind of say nothing so that they don't offend anyone and they can include everyone.
Yeah.
It's a song that no one actually likes.
Yeah.
Because it's a song that has no personality.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian music is full of that kind of song.
Yeah.
A song that intentionally just says the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone can find their place in it. But it means that there's nothing to find.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want to, we want to find that connection. We want to find other people. That's why, Les Mis has been my favorite book forever. And I've never been to France. I don't speak French. I know nothing about the French Revolution. Uh-huh. But it's because of the characters, because of I find myself in all those characters because he describes them so well.
Yeah.
And the more specific that writing is, the easier it is to be a part, to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to have my heart broken. I know what it feels like to feel like something unjust has happened. I know what it feels like to carry guilt.
Yeah.
And that's where you resonate with each other.
Yeah. But what you just said those are all abstractions and generalities.
Yeah, but if you just say, well, okay, so here it is. It's the two different kinds of writing is, I feel ashamed. Cool. And there's a guy walks into a store and he doesn't look up and he does and he shuffles his feet and he mumbles and like, why? What was, Yeah. Oh, we unpack his story. We learn that he did this and he regrets it. Oh, there's the shame. Like, and we all we identify with that. Meanwhile, the guy that says, I feel ashamed, we don't identify with it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's show, don't tell. It's the classic.
When you speak directly about an emotion, it's really difficult to evoke that actual emotion.
Yes.
If you talk about sadness directly, I might feel pity for the person who's sad, but I'm probably not going to feel sad. Like the best you can hope for is pity, and you may not even get that.
Yeah.
As opposed to, when you talk about, as you said, you tell a story, and I can feel sadness in a way that talking about sadness doesn't work.
Yeah. And in the worship music world where I live, it's like having a song for a conservative white church that talks about dancing. Oh, I feel like dancing. Clap on the 1 and the 3. No one's dancing. Like you gotta, the setting, the tone, everything has to communicate the thing that it is.
Yeah.
It has to communicate the thing you want it to. You have to show people, and you have to create the space for that energy, versus just telling somebody in a disconnected way.
In the worship music world, what's the path toward the specific and the concrete?
Oh man!
In other words, every now and then I'll see a worship. I'll hear a new worship song that is specific and concrete, and it's like, this is amazing. But it doesn't feel like this is now a cascade that now other songs, more and more songs do it.
Yeah, well, it's because of that thing. It's because we're scared to show, and not tell, and it's because I think the gospel. I don't know how much you like to get into this stuff on here, but the gospel is only relevant to people who've experienced pain, right?
Yeah,
and so good songs about the gospel that show and don't tell involve darkness and light.
Mm-hmm.
But we are a culture of at least a commercial entity, the commercial side of the church that sells products to churches does not like to deal with any darkness. And so the reason that those songs are few and far between is because it's very rare to have a song that someone that can show hurt and pain that's still sellable.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find them, they're incredible.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more out there that don't get heard because the mechanism is about encouraging and celebration. But now we're in it'll be interesting to me. Sorry, I'm taking this probably way left field of where you want to go, but this is the world I live in these days. It'll be interesting for me to see what kind of songs churches sing over the next few years as 12 million people lose their jobs, a couple 100,000 people die, we're in fear and angst. Are we going to start singing more songs of lament and sorrow, which also allows us to have more songs about hope and joy that are rooted in something? Yeah. It'll be. I hope it goes that way. It'll be interesting to see.
Be interesting. Yeah. That song, "Happy Days Are Here Again." Let us sing a song of cheer. Didn't that come out during the Depression?
It did. It did. It was a jingle, man, to sell.
Yeah.
Everything.
Most of those really cheerful. Most of those, movies from the Depression were really cheerful.
Yeah. People want to buy. I mean, people want to attach to something. They want hope.
Yeah.
It's why it's hard to reach Flannery O'Connor. Even though you know it's good.
Yeah, right.
I just read The Road, and I'd never. You actually told. I remember having a conversation with you about The Road at least once, maybe more than that, about how many times I've started that book and not been able to finish it because it's so bleak.
Yeah. Did you make it through this time?
I finally did. About 3 weeks ago, I finished it, and I set it down and went, well, it was bleaker than I even thought it would have been.
Man, I have such mixed feelings about that book because a lot of people just really love it and see a lot of hope in
well
there.
written.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's absolutely well written. No question about that. I have, and I can't decide if I'm willing to stand by this or not, but I have, one thing I've said about that book is it feels like any hope you find in that book is hope that you brought yourself. So I see people who say that I saw that book as hopeful. I think I'm not sure I think you're a hopeful person and you brought it with you, but I'm not sure you found it there.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find a lot of hope in that book.
Yeah, I mean, he's got he's carrying some fire or something. Is that right? And that's
a little bit. Yeah, there's some moments of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I never. The mother who killed. There's the mother who killed herself, and I never felt like the book showed me why she didn't make the better choice. But anyway, that's not.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah, that one sticks with you. So as much as you want to talk about it, I'm in that. Yeah. It's still present.
Okay, so you've written songs since you've started doing the pivot?
I have.
That was 4 years ago that you.
Yeah.
So you may feel like you've already answered this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How has your songwriting changed?
What's interesting is I haven't written a lot of songs since I started the podcast. I've helped a ton of people write their own songs. Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot more energy doing that these days.
Because you're an A&R.
Yeah, just because of my job and just, yeah.
Maybe we should say what A&R stands for. And since I don't know, I'm going to let you say it.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people think it's artists in residence, but it's not. It's artists and repertoire. So it's artists and their songs. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of talent scout, manager, what do they call it? Project coordinator, and counselor. And with probably a little bit of a writing teacher thrown in. So I love it. It's a really, really fun, unique, weird, exhausting job.
Yeah.
But yeah,
of your gifts, it seems to me.
Well,
to encourage and help develop other writers or other performers.
Well, you're kind of saying that. That's my hope. But I have recently started writing for myself again. And it has it's the first time in my artist career that I'm inviting other people to write with me. It has been the biggest difference. There's not a song on any of my solo albums that anybody else helped write. Which in Nashville is becoming more and more unique because Nashville is a town of co-writing.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time I've ever ventured into co-writing for myself. And I've been wrestling more and more, not wrestling, but I've been, I guess, ruminating more and more on the thought of legacy and what I leave for my kids. Not just like my place in our community, but like the work that I do. My children, when they don't live with me anymore, will invariably at some point go to figure out who they are, who I was, and so I'm wanting to make sure that the things that I leave for them to find, the messages in bottles is how I kind of think of it, that the things that are out there for them are the things that I want them to hear me say. So more than anything right now, all of my writing is directed at how do I teach my children the gospel in songs.
Are there things from earlier in your career, things you've put out there that are less in line with what you hope they'll find?
Yes,
Okay.
there are. There's a lot of 23-year-old navel gazing that's out there.
Yeah.
There's a number of sort of songs from. There was a good chunk of my life, probably mid-20s, early 30s, where I was very cynical. I was very angry. It's way easier to look at the people that you've perceived have wronged you than it is to do the work of becoming a better person. Yeah. And I chose to be angry rather than do that work for a long time, and I wrote a lot of songs out of that. I was the victim. Other people were stupid. And that's not the subject of the songs, but it's definitely the subtext. And not everybody might even hear that, but I hear it when I find those songs now. It's like, I can never play this song again. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed about who this person was. And so, I'm really like, I'm doing an active campaign in my own life to like make sure that there's a healthy body of work that I want them, that I'm proud of them finding. Yeah.
That's a worthy endeavor. I love hearing that.
Oh, thanks, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the song about, was it Beautiful Place? That
was the one that was the song that opened up this vein for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which was a song about, I mean, ostensibly it's a letter of direction of here's what you should do after I die. Scatter my ashes in beautiful places so you have an excuse to go see the world. But obviously the subtext of that song is like, go see the world, go have an adventure, like live a life of adventure with people that you love. And I just now, once you put something out there like that in your own life, now you have to view everything else through that lens.
What do you mean? I don't understand what you mean when you say that.
Like, once you have that conversation and go, oh, my kids, like this song is specifically for my kids to find, right? Yeah. Like I'll play it at a concert, but really it's not for them. It's for my kids in a long time, which means that they're also going to find these other songs, which means, what am I doing?
Okay. All right.
So it doesn't necessarily change everything I'm going to write, but it definitely has pointed things in a different direction. Like, I love the song Space Pirates that I made for and that's my children's favorite song. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'll probably do more dumb things like that. But do I have a song that my kids can walk down the aisle to, or that they can, I don't know. There's these other. It's just made me realize, like, most of my music has been very self-centered. It's been about me, what I want you to think about me.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of my life has been that. And so I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to live that kind of life. Like, I want to live a life where people are better for the conversations that we've had, and I think that's just getting older. You start to realize that's what is important, and that you have to do internal work to be able to do the thing, to do the kind of work that you want to do in the rest of the world. You have to do that work in your own self first.
Yeah. Can you put a finger on, or was this a really gradual process? The change from I'm going to see what, this sort of self-centered approach to I'm going to write songs that create a certain vision of me, to being a little more other-centered in your writing. Was that a slow process, a quick process?
Yeah, it's It's definitely been a slow process, and a number of things contribute to it. One is that your children say things like, "Dad, why are all your songs sad?" And that's one of them. Oh, that's not a good thing. It's like, "You're funny. Why are your songs sad?" But then the fact is, like 6-7 years ago, I started this part of my career where I help other artists, and the first couple years of that were very hard because I'm a 4. I'm too special. You need to know how special I am, as well as, well, I'm helping you also. And it's the life of any kind of discipleship is eventually you learn more and more to just get out of your own way, and that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that it's all a reflection of just, he who began a good work is faithful to complete it, more than it is any conscious decision of my own.
Yeah. By the way, what is the answer to the question, "You're funny, why are your songs sad"?
Well, when I was in my early 20s, when I started being a musician, it was like grunge had just died. But grunge was still very much alive in my heart, And everybody that I just loved, like I looked up to, was Pearl Jam and the Smashing Pumpkins, and like I just loved this. That was what I grew up on, and so I thought that to be a musician meant you had to be this sort of like Johnny Depp character all the time, right? And I was just an annoying, obnoxious, sad sack. And I look back at those times like, oh man, my friends were having fun, and I was too busy being sad for no reason. And when I met I'd known my wife and I had been friends for a long time before we started dating, but when we started getting closer, and kind of started dating, she's just really funny. And when I was with her, she sort of brought out this funny side in me. And I'm not saying I'm like some hilarious dude, because Lord knows. But I found a sense of humor, that turns out that's probably a pretty big part of who I am, and I just had no idea it was there.
Yeah.
And then when you're a dad, I mean,
Dad jokes
are the greatest. You have this audience that's just stuck with you.
That's right.
And they don't get anything, and you just say the dumbest things, and you make yourself laugh, and then you can't turn it off, and you become that person in the office, and you become that person at church, and it's just way better. Also, I say the other part of it is that why do the songs turn out that way? Is part of that's what I brought to the songs. The other part is that most creative people that I know only write when they're sad.
Yeah.
And that's because when you're happy, you're with people, you're outside, you're doing fun things. Like, I'm not going to stop playing badminton to go write a song right now about how great badminton is. I'm going to write a song when I see my friends on Instagram playing badminton and no one called me. I'm going to write a song. And so, and I know this from my own experience, but like, now that I'm the person that people turn songs into, that is the game that I play. Is, did they write this during the day, or did they write this at night? Because if they wrote it in the day, they wrote it for their job. And if they wrote it at night, it's going to be a song they really want on the record, and more than the other one, and it's probably going to be sad. And so that's always the first question is, when did they write it?
Yeah.
And I'll always ask, like, okay, so wait, let me guess. Before lunch, after dinner. And I'm pretty much, I'm in the 90%. Like,
oh, that's hilarious.
It's pretty easy to it's once you start looking for it, you can tell really easily. And the truth is that you need some of all those things. You have to have that. There are those moments of inspiration when things hit and you just feel it, and you just got to stop what you're doing and go make something.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think when I'm in a healthier place, that can be out of a place of joy or a place of wonder or a place of passion. But at least when you're young, more often than not, it's a place of sadness. Because that's kind of, I think, where we learn. That's where we start to learn that this is an outlet for us.
Yeah.
And then as you get better at it, and as you have more feelings, you have more varied feelings.
Yeah.
You find more interesting ways to create. But there also is a lot to be said for, to quote you, the habit of just making time and writing. And that is the difference 100% between my successful artists and my frustrated artists. Is that my successful artists are the ones that get up and do the work. They might not always be the most talented artists. They're 100% across the board. They're the ones that are doing more, that are accomplishing more, and that feel really, and that are proud of the music that they make. Because you write, in my world, you burn a lot of things. Like you write 80 songs to find the 10 that go on the record.
Yeah.
And the artist that puts in the time can build the 80 songs to pick the best from. And even if they're not the best writer, they're going to have more. There's no way you're not going to find some great songs in there, versus the tortured soul that will only give you 10 and 3 are okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so much of the writing work you do is just learning how to do that small percentage that's actually really good.
Yeah. And you never know when it's going to hit, right? Like, that's the thing you can't control. Is like when the magic's going to strike. And sometimes it's like it's the slog. It's the days that feel like a slog. End up, you come back to it and you go, oh, that was really good. On the days that you're super passionate and you feel great about yourself and you're just like, yeah, I'm killing this, and you're like, that was okay.
Yeah. It's like the hilarious jokes you tell in your dream, and then if you can ever remember that joke, you wake up like, that was not even funny at all.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, it's also, I mean, that's the world of performance, is that you play a lot of shows, you just nail a show. You play 100%. Like you not just do you hit every right note, but every little phrasing and all your timing and everything just clicks, and the audience is And then there's a night where you're forgetting words, and you're just stopping and starting, and you're making huge mistakes. People come up to you with tears in their eyes. I needed tonight. This was just the perfect thing for me. And you go, but I was terrible tonight. Yeah.
How do you account for that? Or can you account for that?
Well, I think we all see ourselves more in humanity than we do in perfection.
Yeah.
But also, it proves further that it's not really about us and it's not about how we present ourselves to people, and it's really about how people connect to us, and did we invite them in?
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, but all that to say, I'm now in a place where I get to assign writers. Hey, I need you to write. I'm going to send people to your house who are going to write with you, because I need to get stuff from you. And 10 o'clock, you have to write. And it's fun to watch. I'm a better writer because I have to push people through that, so I know what it means.
Yeah.
And then I get to edit a lot of people's writing, which also is so helpful for yourself. To go, oh my goodness, the things I'm constantly correcting and suggesting for other people, just like with the podcast, I could do that in real time.
Yeah.
I can do that when I write too. And I'm so much less precious than I used to be, which is, I think, why for the first time I feel like I can bring other people in, because I realize I don't always have the best things to say, and other people have great things to say, great things to contribute. I would love their help. And I don't have to feel like I'm the contributor of every great idea for it to be good, which has definitely been something that I took a lot of pride in, having every great idea. And guess what? They're not all that great.
Man, if you can push through to selflessness or self-forgetfulness, It's like a whole new ball game.
It really is. It's so much
It's
more.
so hard to get there. All right. So last question. Who are the writers who make you want to write?
Can I say, do they have to be like book writers?
No.
Okay. Paul Simon,
Yeah.
hands down. The greatest of all time. Bruce Springsteen, not the E Street Band Bruce Springsteen, but Bruce Springsteen when he's alone in his garage. My favorite record of his is this record called The Ghost of Tom Joad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if very few people have really heard it. It was not successful.
Right.
But it just has some of the most incredible songs. And it's like, the whole thing feels like it was like the second take. You know, like it's the first time he got through the song completely, and they were like, "Yeah,
It's good enough.
and they're just amazing.
Hey, do you know about the time that Bruce Springsteen sent a fan letter to Walker Percy? Do you know this story?
No,
Yeah.
please.
So he loved Walker Percy. Sent him a fan letter. Walker Percy, I don't know if he read it or didn't read it, but in any case, he didn't respond because maybe he didn't know who Bruce Springsteen was. I don't know. And so after Walker Percy died, his kids are going through his stuff. And his son finds this letter from Bruce Springsteen. He's like, what? And so the son started a correspondence with Bruce, or at least wrote him back. I don't know this story all that well. I've now told you all I know about that story, but just the idea of that connection with Walker Percy. And yeah, anyway.
That's amazing.
I'm sorry. You're the one answering this question. I interrupted you.
No. That's so great. Yeah, I love his writing. And then I've gotten really into Westerns the last number of years. I've been reading a lot of Westerns. I don't think that's going to ever be a part of my personal writing. And I really like short story writers. That's kind of a lot of what I read, whether it's science fiction, Western, modern stuff, Mark Twain. I love the short story. I think it's probably a lot more like songwriting. So it feels very native to me.
Yeah.
There's a writer named Ted Lieu, Liu, who's I think that he's American, like Chinese parents, I believe. But he writes these it's almost like Black Mirror kind of
Really?
stuff, but way more hopeful and beautiful, like beautiful writing. But it's about this. There are these short stories where in every one, there's something about the world that is fundamentally different. And then here's a moral question or a really poignant personal story in this world where there's some crazy thing that's completely different about this world than our world. And it's an amazing, there's a very Asian sense to it. It's really fascinating.
I'll have to check that out.
It's The Glass Menagerie. I'm gonna make sure that I said his name right. The Paper Menagerie is the book of short stories, and that story made me cry and cry. It's Ken Liu, Kenliu.
Ken Liu. Okay.
Ken Liu.
Great. All right, Andy Osenga. Always a pleasure.
I just rambled at you a bunch, but thank you for having me on.
Well, we'll do it again soon.
The Rabbit Room has partnered with Lipscomb University to make this podcast possible. Lipscomb has graciously given us access to their recording studio in the Center for Entertainment and Arts building. We're so grateful for their sponsorship, their encouragement, and the good work they do in Nashville. Special shout out as well to Jess Ray for letting us use her song Too Good as part of this podcast. Visit jessraymusic.com to hear more of her beautiful songs.
The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.
This podcast was produced by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. All our podcasts are made possible by the generous support of our members. To learn more about us, visit rabbitroom.com, and to become a member, rabbitroom.com/donate.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.